Sometimes a white lie or an obfuscation of the truth is the only way to get what a director needs. The phrase, a need-to-know basis, exists for a reason, and sometimes directors have given their colleagues what they believe to be the right amount of information and no more. Nobody ever said filmmaking was an honest business, after all. I'm Si from WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 movie directors that lied to get what they wanted. Number 10. Christopher Nolan lied to the studio about their own film. Batman Begins. Christopher Nolan, ever the auteur, had a very strong sense of style when it came to the Batman franchise. Considering the last time we had seen the Caped Crusader in cinemas was the toy line advert masquerading as a movie that was Batman and Robin, Nolan had a big task ahead of him of making sure he gave the franchise the shot in the arm that it needed. One of the most important aspects of Batman Begins was the slow burn, and part of that was making sure to give pathos to the moment Bruce Wayne suits up as his alter ego for the first time. Warner Brothers were initially unhappy with how long it took for the hero to appear on screen, just over an hour, and Nolan's rebuff was to compare it to the 1978 Superman film. Whilst Christopher Reeve's Man of Steel doesn't appear until the 48-minute mark, Nolan inflated this number a little to 53 minutes to give himself a little more wiggle room. Considering the huge success these Superman films had previously been for Warner Brothers, they could do very little except let Nolan have it his way, and Batman Begins is all the better for it. Number 9. John McTiernan got the best out of Alan Rickman. Die Hard. Die Hard is one of, if not the most celebrated action flick of the 1980s. It gave us Bruce Willis at his most heroic, a bevy of iconic lines, and the eternal debates about what does and doesn't constitute a Christmas movie. Answers on a postcard or in the comments below. Die Hard was also responsible for kicking off the late-blooming career of the incomparable Alan Rickman, who played cunning antagonist Hans Gruber. One of Rickman's finest moments of the film is the ending, and the ultimate defeat of Gruber, culminating in an iconic composite shot of Rickman falling to his doom from Nakatomi Plaza. After being shot by John McClane, Gruber clutches onto the wristwatch of hostage Holly for dear life. In the moments before his inevitable death, he might be able to take at least someone else with him and takes aim with his pistol before McClane detaches the watch and Gruber falls. The stunts involve Rickman falling 25 feet on a soundstage to an airbag below. Naturally, a carefully planned and safe scene. Nonetheless, director John McTiernan got a genuine expression of panic out of Rickman by asking the stunt coordinators to release him early. Counting down to the moment of his drop, Rickman suddenly found himself falling at 2 rather than 3. Number 8. Stanley Kubrick hid the true nature of the film. The Shining. Working with children can create its own set of circumstances that can make filmmaking a challenge to cater for their needs, like minimal working hours, and in the case of some genres, making sure they're far off set when they're not needed. Danny Lloyd, at 6 years old, played one of the most famous youngsters in horror in the movie version of The Shining. The gifted Danny Torrance, who witnesses terrible things in the Overlook Hotel and is eventually hunted by his psychotically broken father Jack. Unsurprisingly, director Stanley Kubrick and his crew kept young Lloyd away from the horrifying imagery of the movie, and the child actor thought they were making a drama. It was only when he was 17, when he saw a heavily edited version of the film, that he realised he'd starred in an all-time horror classic. Whilst Kubrick has been rightfully chastised for his treatment of Shelley Duvall on set, who portrayed Danny's mother Wendy, Lloyd remembers Kubrick as a warmer figure who would even play catch with him on the hotel's grounds between scenes. He even hung out with the other child actors on set, the twin girls who played the terrifying duo when cameras were rolling. As a child, Lloyd had no idea the kind of movie they were making, and even watching it back, he describes it as more like a home movie to him. Number 7. F.W. Murnau got the last laugh. The last laugh. Whilst his greatest impact on cinema is 1922's Nosferatu, W.F. Murnau should also be known for being a rare example of a director that was bold enough to take shots at a film's finances. In 1924, UFA released Murnau's The Last Laugh, a dark, sardonic silent film that tells the tale of a hotel doorman that loses his job and is demoted to washroom attendant. In Murnau's original cut, the film ends with Emil Janning's main character dying in the washroom, but UFA were unhappy with such a bleak conclusion and demanded that Murnau change the final notes of the picture. He agreed, but didn't inform the studio that he had no intention of sacrificing his vision to do so. The film's only title card reads, and I quote, "Here our story should really end, for in actual life the forlorn old man would have little to look forward to but death. The author took pity on him, however, and provided quite an improbable epilogue." End quote. Murnau shot a final few scenes where the protagonist inherits a large sum of money and treats all his friends to wine and caviar. This out-of-nowhere ending could have ruined his reputation, but it's the sarcastic title card that interrupts the movie that breaks the fourth wall, tells the audience where the director's intentions lie, and absolves him of the nonsense that follows. Number 6. Martin Scorsese let Joe Pesci scare his colleagues. Goodfellas. Martin Scorsese's crime drama Goodfellas tells the story of Henry Hill and his descent into the criminal underworld. Nowhere is the drama of this world perhaps better represented than the restaurant scene. So the story goes that Joe Pesci, who had a rough enough upbringing to occasionally bring him close to the real-life mob, recalled a story to colleague Ray Liotta of telling a mobster that he was funny and the ensuing anxiety that it had caused. Scorsese heard and enjoyed the conversation and decided to put it into the film. However, he only told the two actors to improvise it and kept it from the rest of the gang around them. In the legendary scene, Tommy DeVito suddenly turns on a dime from telling a raucous story to intensely uncomfortable bubbling rage as he asks Henry Hill, "Do I amuse you?" The sequence was all shot at mid-length with no close-ups. Scorsese was keen to capture the real reactions of the cast in this moment, knowing that Pesci was a master of the unpredictable. Many of the gang can be seen avoiding eye contact with anyone, looking off-screen or at their hands with palpable dread about where this is going, before Hill realises that DeVito is messing with him. The scene remains today a powerful example of the powder keg of the mob that Goodfellas so perfectly portrayed. Number 5. The Russo Brothers kept the cast in the dark. Avengers Endgame. Being some of the most anticipated blockbusters of the modern era, the Russo brothers had to take great lengths to try and make sure that the details for Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame didn't find their way out into the public. One of the measures taken was not handing Tom Holland a script and only giving the loose-lipped Spider-Man the lines he needed to say on the day, with zero context. Holland had gained a quick reputation for dishing out spoilers in press junkets due to his overexcitement when promoting both the Spider-Man series and Infinity War. However, it seems as though he wasn't completely alone in this, and that stars were given partial scripts and in some cases told on the day what they would be filming. In an interview with The Tonight Show, Sebastian Stan revealed that he'd been told to turn up to set one day in formal wear to shoot a wedding scene. At first he assumed that the two characters missing might even be the bride and groom, before he was then told it was instead a much more sombre affair. In order to keep the death of one of the MCU's biggest names a secret, the Russo brothers were exceedingly careful about what they said, who they said it to, and what words were on paper. Number 4. Sidney Pollack allegedly set a lion on Meryl Streep. Out of Africa. If you ask Meryl Streep, director Sidney Pollack lied and then some to get what he wanted for 1985 romance drama Out of Africa. The film stars Streep as a wealthy dame who tries her hand at living in the country's outback. Pollack won both the Best Film and Best Director Oscars, but the director and leading lady both remember the last day of shooting differently. With her stuntwoman unwilling, Streep stepped up to the plate to capture an important but potentially dangerous moment where Dame Karen and a party are attacked by roaming lions. However, these wildcats weren't feeling particularly up to being ferocious that day, and they were hard to move whilst leashed. Losing time, Meryl Streep alleges that Sidney Pollack decided to do something drastic. In an interview in 1995, the actress said that Pollack took the tether off on the last take and didn't tell her. Streep says she whipped the lion roared, and then she admitted to running for the bushes in fear of her life. Then again, whilst Pollack admitted that Streep did the stunt in place of a stuntwoman, he called Streep's recollection of the moment a creative memory. Admittedly, this seems entirely possible since most bosses wouldn't sick a live untethered lion on their employee. Number 3. George Lucas didn't tell David Prowse the twist. Empire Strikes Back. Perhaps the most important and certainly the most quoted moment of Star Wars takes place in its 1980 sequel, where Vader reveals to Luke that his adversary is indeed his presumed dead dad. Wouldn't it be weird if the line given during the filming of this iconic moment was something else entirely? Famously, Darth Vader was the product of multiple actors. The powerful voice might be that of James L. Jones, but on set the body of the Sith tyrant was performed by English actor David Prowse. As the rumour goes, in order to keep this pivotal moment a secret from audiences, George Lucas took advantage of the fact that Darth Vader was due to be dubbed. Pulling Mark Hamill aside, Lucas told him what the final line would be and to react accordingly to his own rhythm. He was one of the very few men on the production who knew the truth. What Prowse said in his West Country accent is still up for debate, but is largely believed to have been, "No, Obi-Wan killed your father." When Prowse saw the final film, he was shocked. Not that he wasn't used to being dubbed, he'd even gotten into the habit of lazily delivering lines, but he hadn't been privy to Vader's actual big reveal despite playing the character on screen. Number 2. Ridley Scott terrifies his casts repeatedly. Prometheus. One of the most famous pieces of behind-the-scenes trivia, not just about Alien, but perhaps all films ever, is that Ridley Scott surprised and disgusted his entire cast by not telling them about the extent of the chestburster effect. Keeping it as vague as possible meant that when John Hurt's body exploded, his cast would react as realistically as possible as they were showered with animal guts and blood. However, it's not as widely known that Scott pulled this kind of trick all over again when he returned to the franchise to shoot 2012 prequel Prometheus. The first crew member to die in the film is teen biologist Milburn, who gets taken out by the Hammerpede, an alien snake-like creature that crawls inside of his spacesuit and goes for a trip down the man's esophagus. Shortly thereafter, the crew learn about Milburn's death by finding his corpse. This was all in the script and was explained to the cast. However, Scott left out an important detail. Once Kate Dickie, playing the role of Ford, rolled Milburn's body over, the Hammerpede was going to shoot out of his suit at them. Fair warning to any actors ever working with Scott in the future. There are surprises and lies by omission potentially in your wake. Number 1. Debbie Isitt lied about blurring nudity. Confetti. Confetti is a 2006 comedy mockumentary that follows 3 stories of hopeful couples looking to win their dream weddings. The plot strain that drew the most distaste was the up-and-coming British comedians Robert Webb and Olivia Colman as a pair of naturists. To give director Debbie Isitt a writing credit for the film is probably the funniest joke about the production. Bouncing off the red-hot success of The Office, the film is totally improvised. Outside of Confetti, her filmography features a handful of dire holiday movies and nothing else. So most likely sensing that she had no real talent, Isitt decided that infringing on the rights of her actors was probably the best way to garner attention off the back of her dreadful movie. Despite the director promising to pixelate Webb and Coleman's genitals, the actors were horrified to find themselves completely uncensored at the film's first screenings. Speaking on Confetti, Coleman called it the worst experience of her life and that she understandably couldn't sleep for a year because of it. The pair did enter early talks to sue Isitt and the production company, but decided to drop the suit and try to forget about it. This disgusting betrayal of trust is gladly not something that seems plausible in the modern day, but it's shocking that it was allowed to happen at all. And that's the list. Let us know what you thought of this video down in the comments below, and any other times that you can think of famous directors lied to somebody to get their way. Make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe and hit that notification bell. I've been Cy for What Culture, and have a good week.